Okay, all right. So what I'm going to be talking about today is this topic of positivity in the workplace. And the nice thing about this, I'm probably going to talk for maybe 20 minutes, and then we're going to do an exercise, and then we're going to be done for the day. So the nice thing about this talk, to a certain extent, is that it's not mine. This is a book called Eat That Cookie that you're going to hear me talk about a lot today. It's by Liz Jaswick. She goes by Liz Jazz. This is a great read, and if you even have the option to be able to do an audio book, you can hear the author, who's very dynamic, talking about this. The bottom line of what this talk is about is that healthcare is a tough industry. The work that we do is hard. And the idea that we want to focus on customer service with a smile, greeting every person over the phone when they come in, every client that we interact with, every family member, community partner, that we're going to do it in a positive way, is really about asking staff to do one more thing, right? It's like there's always something new that we're asking staff to do. The other part of the talk, though, is really about how we need to stay positive and what we can do to be able, especially for you all as leaders, to be able to help your staff remain positive. And so there's always a little bit of a struggle in terms of how do we ask staff to do more? How are we going to focus on this positivity? Because a lot of times what happens is that, use the bottom. Sorry. Staffs, we know, and staff will say when we have a pushback around new initiatives and positivity, they're overworked. Yep. We're understaffed. Yep. We don't have enough people. We have too many clients, too high volume, too high acuity. There's too much paperwork. Smart care doesn't work. We're going through constant change. Hello, every day. Guess what? These things are not going away. I could have been talking with you 5 years ago. All of these things still would have applied. I could be talking with you in the future, and these things are still going to apply. This is our normal. This is how we operate. And so the choice that we all have to make is that given that all of these things are here, how are you going to handle it? Are you going to choose to be miserable and to be negative and to constantly pull down the workplace? My hope is that the goal is that people are going to learn how to be positive. So I think that if we can focus on having a positive workplace, and obviously it's not just me, Studer Group thinks this too, that if we can really focus on having a more positive workplace, that we actually are in a really good shape to be able to make this a better place to work. And I think that people will actually find that their jobs get easier rather than more difficult, given that all of these things are still here. We're still going to be short-staffed, but I think that if folks approach their work with a little bit more positivity, that it's actually going to make the work easier to do. So Studer, you all have seen this flywheel before. This notion, and this is where our pillars come from. And the middle part of it is what's most important. What is it that makes you happy about the work that you do? And that answer is going to be a little bit different for every single staff member. But the bottom line is that when you do work that you know makes a difference, when you feel like that you have purpose and meaning in the work that you're doing, no matter how hard it is, no matter how many clients you have, how many bills have to be submitted, how many medical records have to be scanned, it doesn't matter what role you do. When you know where you fit in the wheel of the work that we do, and when you recognize the value that you have, you're probably going to be in a much better position. You guys have heard me say before, and I say it a lot, I love my job. My job has evolved a lot since I've been with this organization. I've been in different roles. I love my job. Why do I love my job? I mean, I'm a chief now. I still have to swallow that word a little bit. I work with this guy over here the most. But part of why I love my work is because I love my coworkers. I love where I work. I love what I do. I feel like that no matter when we have meeting after meeting, or a tough, risky client that comes in, or a record that's incomplete that somebody's frustrated with, sometimes I have a compliance report that I'm dealing with. Those aren't fun, but I feel like I'm making a difference. I feel like I'm contributing to the work that we do. And so in that sense, it keeps me happy. And so what we really have to do is to be able to work with our staff to be able to figure out how we can make them happy and how they can make themselves happy to be able to find purpose in what they're doing. So there's a lot of this talk that, again, is covered in the book, but I have a couple of clips from the author, and she's real sassy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the first clip. It's just, we're just going to play 3 minutes of it. And this is a clip of Liz Jazz talking about how to drive negativity out of the workplace. And I want you guys to listen, especially at the end, to see if you see yourself in any of what she's talking about.
We get as much negativity in the workplace that we are willing to put up with. And I think we have been far too accepting of negativity. I don't think it's okay to come into work every day and be in a bad mood because the job is hard. Because you know darn well you're working with people who do the exact same job every day and they're in a good mood. We have to take the steps necessary to drive out negativity. And what we permit, we promote. I did not invent that saying, but I know for a fact that the reason why we've gotten so much negativity in healthcare is because we continue to allow it. I gathered my team together one night and I said to them, this emergency department has gotten far too negative. What can we do to make this ED just a little less negative? And they said, well, administration ought to. I'm like, no, not administration. What are we going to do? Oh, well, corporate should. No, not corporate. Human resources. No, not human resources. It was a very difficult conversation because when most people are asked, how do we make the workplace better? We never start with ourselves. It's always if he did this and she did that and they did this, they did that. So it took us almost the whole first hour. And I'm going to tell you something. Moving my team from being very negative to positive was very rewarding work. Did not happen overnight. Quite frankly, it took longer than moving service excellence, but it was well worth it. We spend a lot of time at the workplace. It is worth the effort to create a work environment that's positive. And they started that night with a very tiny first step. The first thing that they agreed to do to make that emergency department just a little less negative is they all agreed to stop saying to each other at change of shift, run away, don't even badge in, I'll pretend I never saw you, save yourself, go, run, flee, flee. Now that's not malicious. It's done out of some sense of camaraderie, but it's negative, isn't it? Sure. You come into work and your coworkers are saying, run, run, run and hide, flee, run. You're thinking, whoa, you're not thinking, wow, yippee, another day in paradise for me. I don't think most of you are negative, but I do think we are all very guilty of supporting negativity. The negative person comes in and they throw their pen across the desk and they say, this place is crazy. And we say, yeah, I hear you, boy, ain't that the truth? Oh, you could sure say that again. Well, when the negative person hears that from their coworkers or their leaders once or twice a day, they begin to believe that not only is that behavior appropriate, but in some odd kind of way we actually appreciate it. We need to stop that.
So I played this for my husband last night, and he was like, she's talking to me. He was like, you need to come and bring this into our work. It doesn't really matter where you are. I think healthcare is a little more complex because of our clients and sort of the challenge, the burden that we carry with all the clients that come in. But the reality is that negativity, it is so pervasive, and we do allow it. And so if we allow for people to throw their pen or to be able to talk negatively or to not be excited about coming into work, I think that that's something that really erodes the culture. It's not good for us. So I think this is a great quote, and she talked a little bit about this. So this is about us. This is about you as an individual. That morale is an inside job. This notion that I control my morale and you control yours. And so it is not my responsibility to keep everybody happy, right? I'm not pizza. Not everybody likes what I can do. And so it's a great question to be able to ask your team, because what might make my particular team happy and what might make them feel good about work is going to be totally different than a different team. And so this notion here of having individuals be responsible for morale instead of them talking about morale as if it's this abstract concept that Keith and I and Bill are responsible for, that's not a good plan. This is about something that each individual really needs to be able to own. And I said it before, the work that we do is hard. It doesn't matter where you work, but it's also hard. And putting up with people who are in a bad mood and who are being negative, that's also pretty hard too. So what we want to move to is to develop a culture of gratitude. I feel like we're already taking steps in the right direction. We have Cheers for Peers. There's been some employee recognition that's happened. We're doing a lot of shout outs in the Friday update. We have a number of different ways that individual teams and organizationals are doing this. But I think that we also have to really pay attention to the small things that truly make a difference. And one of the things that Liz talks about is about finding the wow moments. And a wow moment isn't a big thing, but it's really, really personal. We just had a fantastic wow moment that started at Centerpoint, where Deirdre had a client who spoke with her who expressed some suicidality. Wow, the fact that the client was comfortable enough approaching Deirdre to be able to have that conversation, that in itself is worth recognizing. Deirdre worked with Liz, who sent an IM to Kristen over at the phone intake counseling, one of our phone intake counselors. Within minutes, she was able to get in touch with Tom, who's a behavioral health tech over at Bridge. Tom was able to get in the car, because he's our driver too, and drive over, pick the client up. The client felt safe enough to be able to make that transfer and get the client over to the walk-in center. Wow. I mean, that is part of how our system is supposed to work, right? However, when it does, when we knock it out of the park like that, especially in a way that really helps clients, it's super important to be able to recognize every step of that process. And that's just one example that we wrote about in the Friday update. I would really challenge you guys to find those wow moments on a regular basis. Being able to give praise, being able to catch people in the moment when they're doing something right, when they're doing something really good, is very important. We want to say thank you as much as possible, right? Some people are great about being able to say thank you, but also being able to recognize when you see a behavior that really works, that you speak up about it. And so while we are talking about negativity, we're also talking about being positive. This is about how do you recognize those behaviors when somebody does something and you can immediately call out that behavior. And you need to do it a lot, because if you give someone one compliment and then somewhere down the road they hear a negative, people get stuck on the negative. And so oftentimes we need to have 3 to 1, 5 to 1, 8 to 1 of positives in separate from the negative. The other thing that we have to do is we have to be able to shut down the negativity right away. That's trickier. The problem with being able to, with negativity and shutting it down, is that we have to be able to create an accountable workplace. I have up here no drama. And the reason where this comes from is that if let me see my notes. So if a staff member didn't show up on time for a client, you would say something right away, right? If a staff member showed up to work late for checking in at the acute care campus, somebody would probably be on that right away. We don't seem to shy. There's certain areas of stopping negative behaviors that we jump on right away. But then when it comes to negativity, when staff say something publicly, when you can see that things are festering, we don't say anything. We don't interrupt the behavior. And it's just as important as you recognize what is great behavior, that you also be able to tell people to stop the negativity. You don't have to get into a whole conversation about it. This is about saying stop and then being able to move on. The other thing that is really important, I love this quote, what we permit, we promote. If you as a leader of the organization do not say anything in that moment, you have just given okay for that behavior. That's super important to me as a leader, so that I know if I allow whatever was just said that was really inappropriate, if I allow that to continue, then I'm giving permission for that. And I don't want you all to contribute to that. And so that's where you do have some responsibility to essentially be able to build an accountable culture. There's another quote that she had, that Liz had in her book. When you start holding people accountable for negative behaviors, that's when people start to change their negative behaviors into good ones. And as a result, everyone gets to enjoy a more positive, productive workplace. The real point of this, though, is that what we're trying to do is to change behaviors. When you change behaviors, that also winds up changing people's attitudes. And so oftentimes we'll talk about how somebody has, she has such a bad attitude or something like that. But it's not really the attitude that you're going to address, it's the behavior. It's when someone makes a comment, it's when they throw a pen, it's when there is an eye roll that happens, it's when someone is texting on their phone while you're trying to have a meeting, it's when someone checks an email while you're supposed to be having a one-to-one meeting with them. Any of those interventions that you decide are not okay, then it's really important for you to be able to stop that. Studer talks a lot about in the literature that if you nip negativity in the bud right away, that's how you're actually going to help stop the behavior. And by doing that, you wind up setting a standard. And as I was reading about it, I was thinking about, okay, what are some of the standards that we have as an organization already? One of them, for example, is that we get to work on time, right? No problem. No one seems to be challenged by that. We have a no sexual harassment practice. If there was any sort of sexual harassment, we would address it, and we do if there's ever an issue. As a general rule of thumb, I have practices of what I do and who I say hello to in the morning when I come. A lot of times as we're leaving the building, especially for those who work in satellite sites, we check to see if anybody is in the building. Those are standards of behavior that we have, that we set clear expectations that everybody needs to follow. What you guys are going to be doing, and what I'm going to be asking, I have a worksheet that you guys are going to work on, is to be able to figure out what are 3 standards that you want to set in your specific team to be able to have a clear expectation of the behavior. And then you, as a leader, are going to need to think about what you're going to do to be able to nip that behavior in the bud if you see negativity in the workplace. And I'm going to empower you all right now with the word stop it, right? She's going to give you a different word, but stop it is super important. That when you tell someone, stop it. We're not going to talk about that right now. A lot of times people do have comments, feedback. Maybe it's negative that they want to give. There is a safe space for that, and it's usually called supervision, right? Come into my office, talk to me one-on-one about something that you're having a challenge with. You do not need to spew a concern that you have in front of everyone. And that's something that I see works really well. Some teams are super positive, and you would never see that happening. And then in other cultures, you have lone wolves who love to, be able to be very vocal about something that they feel like is negative. And I would really challenge you guys to be able to find ways with your own leadership style to be able to get that out of the meeting and to make sure it's not public, but that there's always a safe space to be able to address the negativity. So I have another clip from her that's a lot of fun, and it's called Eat That Cookie.
Shortly after I started my speaking career and consulting career, I was asked to come out to a hospital in Fort Wayne, Indiana, a very, very large maternal child division, 250 folks. And they wanted me for 6 months just to work on morale. Nothing about leadership, nothing about service, just all culture. So I gathered a committee of about 20 of them together, and I said, now you need to come up with an initiative to make this division less negative. And they decided they were going to declare 1 day a week no negativity day. Just 1 day, because they thought all 7, well, that's crazy. But 1 day a week they thought that was kind of, manageable, and they thought it would be kind of like a novelty. And they were a 24/7 operation, but even at 24/7, Mondays are not great days just to rule out negativity. So they decided Tuesdays would be no negativity day. In order to make sure that that team knew that Tuesday was no negativity day, every Tuesday within that very big division, every department, in fact, every shift, received a nice, great big plate of those yellow cookies with the smiley faces on them. You know what I'm talking about. And you can be sure there was some negative people in that division that looked at those cookies and got mad. This insults me professionally. Smiley face cookies, what am I, a dog? You're supposed to shove a cookie in my mouth, pat me on the head, I'm in a good mood. Now, as a leader, you might be tempted to say, I understand how you feel. I see your point. Let me bring your feedback to our committee. No, you can't do that anymore, because I'm going to tell you something. I know that smiley face cookies are not the answer to all of our problems in the workplace, okay? I get that. I'm not, woo, that's nuts. But I also know cookies are not the problem, are they? Cookies, a problem? Never. The problem is the negative person standing in front of you who only sees the bad in everything. You know those type? You get a blue tote bag for Christmas, they're like, why is it blue? Why can't we ever have a choice of a color? Maybe for once we'd like to pick out something that's red or green or yellow. And why is it a tote bag? They give us some type of tote bag every single year. How many tote bags could a human being possibly need in their lifetime? I just wish they'd put that money in my check. All right, here's your $2. Woo, woo! Go make yourself a party. You're working with people who are bringing in smiley face cookies. Those are the people you support. And you've got some negative person going, oh, for Pete's sake. We've got work coming out of our ears, but it's Happy Tuesday, so I'm supposed to be in a good mood. Instead of going, yeah, I understand, let me bring your feedback to the committee, it is time once and for all to look these negative people square in the eye and say to them, shut up and eat that cookie.
So my recommendation is to say stop it instead of shut up. I mean, I think, she makes a really good point, but she's good, right?
Yeah, she's good.
And we have cookies for you. So we'll get to that taken care of. This is what I'm going to ask you to do. We have just a one-page worksheet where I want you to identify 3 behaviors that you want to change on your particular team. And so I'm going to have you sit and work with your teams to be able to think through what are 3 things that you want to change. Just 3. Maybe one of those things is that we respond to an email by the end of the day, right? Maybe one of those things is that we make sure that we say hello to everybody in the morning, that we say thank you. Maybe one of those things is that we don't use stigmatizing language with our clients. You pick. The list is endless and the list is very specific to where you work. But the idea here is that whatever 3 standards, I want you to get started, and then I want you to go back and meet with your teams and introduce this concept. That you just want to work with them, that as a group, as a team, you're going to identify 3 expectations, and then you and everyone else on the team is going to hold every person accountable with those 3 things, and it's going to be for eternity. This is not a fad. This is not a 1-month thing, and you're going to do 1 behavioral expectation at a time. The reason why you're only going to do 1 at a time is because you need to make sure you have 80% compliance, where everybody is doing it at least 80% of the time before you introduce something new. Otherwise, it's just another fad. People can wait it out, and it'll go away, right? This is about permanent change to our culture, making sure that we have accountability. You need to over-communicate. So if you want to find creative ways that you're going to distribute what these 3 behavioral expectations are, however you want to do that as a team, you can do that. You want to make sure that you are setting a good example of that behavior. We all make mistakes, we all slip up, that's true, but you want to make sure that you're modeling it, and you want to be consistent and persistent over and over again. Everyone is going to understand these 3 behavioral expectations that you have when you work on that team or in that building, however it is that you want to do it. I really think that this is, on the one hand, a very easy exercise, and then on the other hand, it's quite a challenge, because I'm asking you to commit to changing the organizational culture, to make sure we have a culture of gratitude, and to make sure that you're finding a way to push negativity out the workplace. I am not going to stand up here and tell you what your team or what your staff need to do to be able to get negativity out in the workplace, but it is each person's responsibility to be able to figure that out. I really truly believe that if we can start to implement some of these, that we have a lot of positive people, and to a certain extent I'm talking to the wrong audience in this room, right? Like, we have a lot of positive people in this room, but you know that you have some low performing staff who need help, and they need to be reminded of what the expectations are. Until you give them crystal clear expectations, it's not going to happen. And so we're going to start with that. I also put on the worksheet the other question of what can we do to be able to, what does it say, make this team less negative. I took it and phrased it as positive because we're a strengths-based organization. And so what can we do to be more positive around here? That question, like Liz mentioned in her video, is actually a little bit tricky, especially if you already have a positive team. If you already have a positive team, how are you going to make it more positive? Well, let's see if you can figure it out. So, okay. So that's all I have in terms of my part. While you're working on your activity, we will pass out some cookies.